Welcome to It's All About the Questions, where learning to ask the right questions can help you achieve lifelong success. Now, here to help you ask all the right questions is award-winning author, international speaker, and business strategist, Laura Stewart.
Good morning, everyone, or good evening, depending on where in the world you are listening to me today. And for some of you, it actually may be Wednesday and not Tuesday. I love all my international listeners and my U.S. listeners. Thank you for continuing to have us trending on New and Noteworthy on iTunes for close to 4 weeks now. Thank you for subscribing to the podcast replays, and most of all, thank you for the reviews and the ratings. We could use some more to move us up in the rankings and get more people to notice the show, and it will help them learn how to ask the right questions so they can achieve their goals. But thank you. And I also want to give a special shout out thank you to somebody I met at a book signing down in Palm Beach, West Palm Beach. And they just got their books published on Amazon. They have a historical romance trilogy out there. The first book is called A Stranger Among Them. So congratulations to Donald Montano. And I had the chance to read these books before they came out. And I have to tell you, I couldn't put them down. I loved them. It was a great beach read for those of you who like to read books on the beach or just enjoy a good book with historical romance stuff thrown in. So grab A Stranger Among Them and the other two books in the trilogy. They're only $3.99 on Kindle. Congrats to Donald Montano. And now to something else that's really interesting and fascinating, our show today. When I was thinking about the show and preparing for the show, I thought, it's really interesting the way the universe works. It is the 1-year anniversary of my divorce becoming final. And my guest today is a woman who talks about relationships and communications between men and women. And it's just so fascinating that she is on my guest talking about gender communications and gender intelligence and communications and relationships. And she's here today. And she and I actually met at an Arianna Huffington event in New York City. And her name is Fiona Fine. And what I love about Fiona is how real and authentic she is. And she's just an absolutely brilliant woman. She is an author, speaker, and coach. And she is growing a movement for women and men to live and love on their terms. The book that she has out is a relationship book called Babe in Total Control of Herself, affectionately known as B.I.T.C.H, or dare I say it on the air, bitch. I love this book. She's turned her mess into a message after 30 years in a man's world of engineering and tech. So she's a fellow geek like me. I love that. Career coaching. You got to love us geeks, right, Fiona? Career coaching and recruiting. Like me, at times, she completely lost her femininity, her health, and even her sense of humor, learning how to fit in and make the big bucks. She finally reclaimed her sassy, love it, and she so is sassy, vibrant self, and went from surviving to thriving. She then set out to help women and the men who want to love them to create their best lives so that they can have the money, the job, the health, and yes, even the love of their dreams. So I'd like you to join me in welcoming Fiona Fine to It's All About the Questions.
Thank you so much, Laura. Yes, it has been a while since you and I caught up, and I do remember it.
It was so much fun. We were sitting in the front row at Thrive in New York City, listening to some amazing speakers. And what I found more amazing for me were the people that I met at the event. And when you and I met, my now ex-husband, 3 days before, had said he wanted out of the marriage. No counseling, no anything. He just wanted to go. That was it. He was done. No talking even before that. And he agreed to stay and hang out with my mom while I was gone, since I caregive for Mom. And he had to find a place to live anyway. And I got up there and met you. And it was just so fascinating. The way that the universe puts the right people together.
Yes, no, it was a phenomenal group of people, women in the audience as well as on the stage. It really was.
I feel very grateful for that day and the fact that you and I have stayed in touch. And you're doing some really different and amazing things. I know we mentioned your book, but that's not really why we are here today to talk about the book, although I recommend people get it and read it. I had some difficulty with it because it really challenged some of my belief structure about it, and because even though divorce is a year ago, it still hurts. And it hurt for a lot of the reasons that were in there, which I found even more fascinating. But
in which you and I haven't spoken about.
No.
I didn't realize, I didn't know when you'd finished the book or anything, so that's a whole other conversation.
Oh, yeah, that's just a total... We'll probably have to do a webinar just on all of that.
Yeah.
So how did you go from being an engineer and working in the tech world to becoming this authority on relationships and working with men and women in that arena?
I'd have to say that the guys have trained me so well in what a man's world looks like, and how I, as a woman, initially just didn't fit into that. So I have to go all the way back to 1979. I'm entering engineering at 17, and it was a really tough 5 years for me because I had a car accident pretty much the very beginning of it. And so just going through 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 25 years with guys in their world, I realized that we are so different, and yet I think that there was this piece of me that fit really easily in their world. I don't remember ever facing huge discrimination or anything like that, and yet I'm very aware that over the course of the last 20, 25 years, there's been both pluses and minuses to being a girl in a guy's world. The long story short, though, is I kind of hit 50, and I thought, damn, I have been, and I hope that'll be the worst swearing I do. I am an engineer, so I apologize in advance. Yet, at 50, I realized I'd been playing with guys in their world for so long that I really didn't feel that I'd been supporting other women in figuring out how to live their best life. And I'd gotten healthy, I'd had 3 car accidents and a whole bunch of health issues and everything. And yet I'd realized that I knew a lot of the rules of how to communicate between the genders. I knew a lot of what was making the generations even get screwed up, between our kids and the baby boomers and the millennials and in work as well as in relationships. And so at 50, I thought, I am going to start to support both sides coming together. And I started the women's digital publications, and we were doing some media work for Ariana Huffington's Thrive event, and that's when you and I met. And it just kept going.
And, it's interesting because when I met you, you were doing something slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's now transitioned into I'm not going to say, it's not necessarily a smaller piece, it's just a more focused piece of the amazing things you were doing.
So, when I was 50, I came out of retirement. I've been running a coaching and career placement firm for 20-plus years. I've been in that world for 20-plus years. And I'm fortunate enough that I became relatively financially independent at the age of 40. So I've had a runway of time and money, and that's why I say at 50 I thought, how can I support women who are looking to have their definition of having it all? And so I started 2 digital publications, one in the dating space, which is how a lot of the book got started. But I was having so much fun. I'd come out in my late 40s out of my own very long, unfulfilling relationship, and I was having so much fun dating men. And it's probably because I get them. They're simple for me. And all my girlfriends, all my friends, all my coaching clients, everybody was like, oh my God, what are you doing? How do I get to do it? How do I have this fun? So how to put the fun back into dating.com is still an ongoing digital platform. I realized it was still very narrow, and I formed another digital platform, which is where you met me. It's called womenwhorunit.com. I've since passed it over to another team. I've sold it. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like they've done anything with it, so that's a shame. But I realize my true voice is bringing men and women together. truly, that's what I wake up thinking. That's fascinating. How we look at each other, how we handle stress differently, how we communicate differently. So I have taken a broader platform, and I've made it more narrow for me in my true voice.
Well, I love when people start asking themselves questions about, what is my true voice? What is it that lights me up and gives me passion, and are willing to let go of some other things that
it's hard.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, it's really hard. I am all about bold communications, and in fact, I was out last night and some woman said, "Oh, anytime I'm with you, you're always asking such good questions." And it's because that's where the awareness comes from. That's how we can really tweak that true joy out of life, as opposed to just doing the same thing over and over again. And guys get this a little better than women do. The word failure, ask that of women and what it means to us. Whereas guys really do understand that failure is just a piece of the puzzle to creating success.
So they really look at things differently, and words mean different things to men than they do to women?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would.
Very much so.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, because you grew up in this world, right? You and I are two peas in a pod.
Yeah, and sometimes I can easily morph into the man thinking, but I'm never totally happy living there 100%, because a lot of times it feels way too linear to me, and it's a little boring.
It is.
I'll be honest.
No, it is, and that's why, in the book, there's a part of it that says guys really do know that their world, their lives are so much better when they're in a relationship with a good woman. We are the prize. We are what they're working for. We're why they get toys. We're why they compete with themselves and each other, and yet we are us and their families are the ultimate prize. It's just it gets convoluted over the course of time.
Well, I want to continue more of that conversation when we come back from our commercial break. We are here with Fiona Fine, communications and relationships expert. She is known internationally on gender intelligence and inclusion, and we are going to be talking more about the main differences between men and women and give you some really good takeaways that you can go home with and figure out how to improve your relationships, whether you're in one or not, and whether it's a business one or a personal one. We'll be right back after this commercial break with Fiona Fine on It's All About the Questions.
New market highs? Political unrest? Are you worried about your retirement portfolio? Veris Wealth can help you. Ask about Veris Wealth's exclusive asset lock. You can lock your portfolio gains in without having to buy an expensive annuity or giving up daily liquidity of your investments. Asset lock is exclusively available at Veris Wealth Management. Call 772-237-3440 to find out how asset lock can save you.
Today's broadcast being brought to you by Route 60 Hyundai. You'll get a great deal at Route 60 Hyundai before and after the sale. Hey, test drive the brand new Santa Fe. I have one. The skylight is all the way to the back, including the back passengers. It's fantastic. Heated seats, yep, and air-conditioned seats. Test drive the brand new Santa Fe at Route 60 Hyundai today.
Success comes from not only what you know, but also who you know. Welcome back to It's All About the Questions with award-winning author Laura Stewart.
Fiona, before the break, we were talking about how you got down this path and some of the questions you were asking. And I have a big question. Having recently been divorced, well, it's a year, so it's not quite recently anymore, and having mostly worked with men my entire career, and some women too that tended to think they were men. What do you think is the number one communication disaster between men and women?
I'd have to say expectations. We have huge expectations that everybody is like us. And so we're not understanding that not only are the sexes the genders wired differently. But, from generation to generation, we're different as well. So expectations seem to be the main foundational piece that is blocking us from being able to come together and figure things out.
It's interesting that you said expectations, because last week my guest was Cheryl Ellis, and we were talking about becoming deliberate and changing the game of leadership from the inside out. And one of the things we talked about was expectations inside the business environment, and it didn't matter whether it was female to male, male to male, female to female, was that so often we don't actually set expectations, and then we get all upset because our expectations aren't met, but the other person didn't even know that you had expectations, or they thought your expectations were something else. So
absolutely. I'm going way back to when I was a young adult, and my expectations in my first marriage, a friend of mine expectations, literally he says there was no way that he was ever going to keep his wife happy because he didn't even know what was going on that would make her happy. And he kept saying, tell me if we have a conversation. I can work with you, and that happens in workplace as well. It takes time, though, and that's another problem that's going on with everybody being so busy. You can't say to a guy, we have to talk. That's just going to make him run away. So we're not actually forming the kind of bold communications where it's not one person's fault. It just is, hey, let's get on the same page.
You actually, in your book, I think it's on page 61 or something, because I actually wrote a note about that. You have 4 words that instill fear in the hearts of most men. We have to talk. And I went, it instills fear in women, too.
I know. It's funny. I'm in a situation right now that with my partner, I want to say those words so badly, Laura. But I'm like, don't say it. You never get good results from those words.
So how do you approach that conversation when you really do have to talk without saying we have to talk?
Well, it depends. From a guy's point of view, they're never going to bring it up. You got to understand that they will. They have us in compartments, and I have to like that, because there's a certain way that you can really focus on life. And guys taught me that. Compartmentalize my life, and you can really focus, right? But they never open up that relationship compartment. They sort of let it fester. So that's why my quote is, if you don't have the love life of your dream, don't blame a man. It really is, unfortunately, it falls to us as women to figure out how to say, in what I will call kind of man speak, I figure some of the best words are, there's something that I just wanted to be able to talk with you about. When would be a good time? I probably need about 10, 15 minutes. If we don't cover it off by then, we can book another time. Doesn't that kind of sound like office speak to you?
Very much so.
Can you see that they're like, oh, okay, I can schedule that in? And it doesn't threaten their manhood. I'm sorry.
Well, it was one of the things that I had a hard time with when, I was reading the book, was some of those things, because I'm like, well, why do I have to be so responsible for how the way that person feels? It's like, you're a man, get over it, man up kind of thing.
Because, okay, so I'm going to defend them. I'm going to defend me, too, because they trained me so well. And you might find pieces of this. If it's not in a relationship piece, which is much more emotional for us as women, and a lot of women have a very large nurturing gene. I have slightly less of one. We think there might have been a little bit of a problem with the gene pool.
I doubt that, Fiona.
Yet, we have the capacity, the way we're wired, to be able to handle so much more. One of the things I talk about on stage is my laptop analogy, and I can go into it in a minute, but just bear with me that we are wired differently.
I agree.
They don't have the capacity, the sheer DNA capacity, for lack of a faster way of speaking, to do what us as women more naturally can do. So I'm sorry, But if we're going to take one of the tips that I always say, be 100% accountable, we have to know that it is our job if we want to create spectacular. We have an ability that most of them don't have. And I'm generalizing, of course.
Right, absolutely, because, there's always exceptions to the rules and things like that.
Lots of them.
Yeah. It just seems so exhausting from a woman's perspective with all the stuff that we have to do.
So why don't we start delegating some of this other stuff? That's a piece I'd love to talk about. Why do we take on so much? Guys don't.
Well, in some cases, it's the stuff that needs to be done and the guys refuse to do it, no matter how many times you ask them.
Okay, but who's saying it needs to be done? Is that our internal society clock and communication speaking to us? What would happen if we simplified our lives? When I was building my coaching and recruiting practice, I'm a pretty simple person. I've got more talent than I have ability to managerial. And everybody warned me, bigger is not necessarily better. So the simple life sometimes I think is much more what is going to fulfill us. And yet we're putting in, especially as women, we're adding in, we don't know the word no many times.
I know that is a big issue for me. I have a lot of trouble setting boundaries and saying no.
And guys don't necessarily. So why, to a certain degree, when we have not yet become aware of that piece of ourselves, and yet they're so in theory good at it, and they're good at it because for many different reasons. Society doesn't expect it of them, right? And there's that word expectations again.
And when we come back from the news break, we are going to talk more about that. And I know you have this really great analogy and story to talk about the difference between men and women. And when we come back, maybe you can offer some 3 tips that dramatically increase the level of communication. I would love if you could do that with me. We'll be back after the news break with Fiona Fine. Go to it'sallaboutthequestions.com for more information. Okay.
Welcome to It's All About the Questions, where learning to ask the right questions can help you achieve lifelong success. Now, here to help you ask all the right questions is award-winning author, international speaker, and business strategist, Laura Stewart.
Hey everyone, welcome back. So Fiona, when we were talking about communications and not saying the words, we need to talk. It just makes me laugh every single time because, you so want to say that, and you've told me that you're in a relationship now where you're thinking I should say it, but don't say it, and we talked about don't say it. It's so bad when you say it.
Get me the results I want.
So here's a question for you, because this is something that's been on my mind for the last year or so, pretty much since we first met. When you're in a relationship and it doesn't work out and things start to go south, and that could be a business relationship, it could be a personal relationship. As a woman, I have a tendency to take 100% responsibility for it going south, but not always in a good, productive way. Sometimes it's all about blame, right? And when you're in the midst of, say, the nightmare part of it, where it's all really emotional, it's also not uncommon for men or women to point fingers and place all the blame on the other person. Can you talk to that point? I mean, how does that really factor in with the communications?
So I'm going to raise a point. There's a difference between what I'm saying, which is take 100% accountability for the relationships that matter in your life. Okay, I'm known for that. There is a difference between accountability and responsibility. You can give me the responsibility for world peace, but if I don't pick up the accountability to say I'm going to do my best as often as I possibly can, then you can give me world peace as a responsibility, and I'll never achieve it. I'll never get anywhere. So when it turns into the blame game, though, and I mean, I was famous for this. Oh my God, how do you think the book got its name? Really?
and
You
I
know, it's
also
like it's
and I know
not my fault.
you also have other ways of putting words in for B.I.T.C.H, but we'll talk about that another time. Go ahead.
Yes, we've got some. There's lots of cute ones for those acronyms. Yes, there's lots and lots of them. So here's the thing about that. The blame game is right up there with expectations as probably, the second foundational piece as to what's going on between communications and relationships. So every time I'm pointing my finger out at you, wagging my finger, blaming, say, you or somebody or the world out there are three fingers pointing back at me. I am the common denominator. The relationships in my life, the happiness I have in my life, the joy, the bliss, the money, everything comes back to me taking 100% accountability, which is really tough words to hear for anybody, male, female, or it. But three fingers pointing back at me. I'm the common denominator in everything that happens in my life. So when I want to say to my partner, we have to talk, really, maybe what I have to say is, what is it about what's going on for me with relationship to him that I have to deal with in my own mind to say, how am I being with this person? Am I being, and I use a word that is uniquely to me, am I being a goddess? Am I being clear with my communications? Am I being confident? Am I choosing well? What I call, all of these are the 6 C's of change. So clarity, choice, consequences, communication. Am I really rocking my own life? Because that shifts so much how people will interact with me. And that's why the book is not at all about game playing, at all. Because I don't play games. I play the game of life, but I never play mind games. Does that give you some framework?
It does, and it had a question pop into my head of something that I did not ask myself in the last couple of years of my marriage that I now wish I had, which was, do I like myself in this relationship? Mm-hmm. And my answer would have been no. I don't like who I was becoming in order to sort of make it through.
And that's the three fingers pointing back at ourselves. And that's, when I say, as women, that it's, if you don't have the love life of your dreams, don't blame a man. That is tough to hear. And yet it gives us permission, which is uniquely a woman's issue. Okay? We wait for permission, but if we give ourselves permission before where that one finger starts to wag, if we look at that type of, do I like myself? Am I putting my best foot forward? Am I being my sassy self? Am I taking care of myself? Am I saying no to things that do not serve me? Am I having the bold conversations with compassion as opposed to both for myself as well as compassion for the other person? This is not even just, man-woman conversations. This is basic communications, and communications are the foundation to all great relationships.
Yeah, I mean, for me, some of it was a me-to-me conversation. I was stopping doing things in an effort to help make things better at home.
Yes. And
to prevent
Laura,
behavior.
That is exactly what I have realized in the last year of my life. I have adapted. So I coach executives, right? And this is really hitting them a lot, especially since 2008 and everything. Their careers are not what they want them to be. And I say probably long before death and taxes is the ability to handle the fast pace of change. So being adaptable is key. And that's sort of what we're talking about here. But I realized I took my adaptability in my relationship way too far. And he's gotten used to it.
Yeah, and you begin to lose yourself. And it's not that you're doing it necessarily 100% of the time. And I laughed when you said, you coach executives and stuff, as do I. And I realized as things were sort of ending in my personal relationship that I was doing the things that I tell people not to. And, you know, and I sit there and I go, why are you doing this? Oh, yeah, okay, I got so caught up in it and the blinders were on and I could only see survival.
Yes.
And it's only when you have awareness of that, is what I think you're saying, that you can then step back and begin to actually have communications again, because you can't really communicate when you're in survival.
You can't. And also, if we go back to the male piece, interaction from women to men, they need a lot of space, and we need as much space so that we are taking care of ourselves as women. Yeah. And we don't give it to ourselves. Permission, this permission thing was one of the biggest things that, I guess, coming from a man's world, I didn't trip over it, just like I didn't trip over guilt very much. But permission is a dirty... Pleasure and permission are the two ends of a spectrum.
Okay, so define what you mean by permission, because I know it's a lot more than most of us think.
Well, permission is really coming down to, are we waiting for someone else to give us permission to do, to be, to have, to enjoy? It can be permission from society. It can be permission from our kids, our loved ones, our spouse. But really it comes down to how do I take 100% accountability, again, for giving myself permission, and it's okay, not feeling guilty that I am consciously, and I don't mean in spur of the moment or from guilt or knee-jerk reaction, but that I'm consciously choosing something, a choice, knowing that the consequences are something that I am going to be able to deal with. So we're covering a lot of ground here. But permission, if you ask most women who are in relationships or dating or something like that, even out in the workforce, permission is, they're waiting for the rest of the world to say, oh yeah, you deserve that raise. Or, oh no, it's okay, you've been widowed long enough, you can start dating. Whereas she may have felt like dating or not dating within the first 4 months or something.
Yeah, somebody just asked me, are you dating again? And I'm like, I have people interested, but frankly, I want some me time. I need to build myself back, my health back, and figure out what it is I exactly want and what my expectations are. And, when I'm ready, I will. There's nothing that says I have to.
I'm going to poke at you. I never want to hear about your expectations. Ever. You and I will go head-to-head on that, girl.
All right, go ahead.
Because you said, I want to figure out what my expectations are.
For me. I don't know what I expect from myself some days.
You can't have expectations of yourself even.
Okay, tell me why.
Because you're going to trip over. You're going to screw that up. Even if you have expectations of yourself, let alone of somebody else, life doesn't come at you that way. In other words, you're going to trip over that expectation. Have desires, have wishes, have goals, have all sorts of other pieces that you can manage. But an expectation has such a connotation of that I expect it, and there is no way that I can necessarily achieve it, or it can happen.
So instead of expectations of myself or for myself, have wishes, have dreams, have desires or thoughts of what I would like my life to look like.
And then you have actions that you are taking. For instance, I am not a morning person, but I have a standing 8:40 call, and I thought, you know what, get me out of bed, put my runners right beside the bed, and be moving when I have to take that call. That is an action that therefore sets up my morning better. And I feel better all the way through the day. So if you have dreams, desires, and women have forgotten how to dream. We have. Ask your average woman, if I gave you 20 grand, what would you do with it? It would not be a dream. It would be a responsibility that she would use the money for.
I would agree with you on that.
A dream that is specific to her as a woman on the planet.
Right, Fiona.
Not, hey, I'd pay my kids to college.
Yeah, which is the way most women think. We're going to be going into commercial break in a little bit. I want to make sure people know how to reach out to you and find out more about your book and the work you're doing, or if they have questions. So can you share your contact information with my listeners?
Yes. I love Twitter because it's 140 characters. I'm at Fiona_Fine, and the website is FionaFine.com. And we do have access to a couple of chapters of the book itself as well. Love to hear from people. So FionaFine.com.
FionaFine.com and at Fiona_Fine. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love how you help people shift their perceptions around words, around thoughts, around communication. You know, I've always used the word expectations. I think of it in multiple different ways, but you made me realize that perhaps I do have some programming around that word that I need to shift. And I'm going to do that. So thank you for that. I always love interviewing people and talking to people on my show because I get so many ahas. And I would love to know from you, my listeners, what your ahas are from today. So tweet at the Laura Stewart and at Fiona_Fine and let us know the ahas that you are getting from the show today and what your relationship questions are or biggest challenges are. And we're going to talk some more with Fiona Fine when we come back from the break. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next in this conversation. I'm loving it, loving it. Thank you, Fiona.
Hi, this is Pat Cannon from CJ Cannon's, where we have the best prime rib in town. We are open from 7 to 9, Monday through Saturday, and Sunday from 7 to 2. We have happy hour all day and night, with live entertainment on Friday from 5:30 till 9. We also have banquet rooms that seat from 20 to 80. So book your parties now, 567-7727. We are located at the Vero Beach Airport, where the only thing we overlook is the runway.
Did you know that Indian River Walk-In Clinic was voted Indian River County's favorite urgent care 2 years in a row by readers of the Hometown News and Vero's Voice magazine? Well, it's true. Indian River Walk-In Clinic is the best urgent care walk-in clinic in the county. Why? Because in surveys, 95% of our patients say they were happy with their last visit. Here's what some of them had to say about Indian River Walk-In Clinic.
My experience at your facility was better than I have ever had at a walk-in clinic. Great service and treatment with good results. I was very satisfied and have told several friends. Staff and doctor were awesome.
It's official. Dr. Ellman, Dr. Carrera, Todd, Abaco, Rebecca, and Indian River Walk-In Clinic's friendly, attentive medical staff are Vero's favorites. Visit them, and you'll see why. Indian River Walk-In Clinic, Miracle Mile Plaza, open 7 days a week. They'll make you feel better.
At Surf Pro of Vero Beach, no job is too big and no question is too small. So when fire, water, or mold damage strikes your home or business, call on Surf Pro of Vero Beach at 772-770-0501. That's where you'll find a team of specialists that's faster to any size disaster. So when the things that matter most are on the line, make sure Surf Pro of Vero Beach is too by calling 772-770-0501. That's Surf Pro of Vero Beach, helping make fire, water, and mold damage like it never, ever happened. Franchises are independently owned and operated.
Success comes from not only what you know, but also who you know. Welcome back to It's All About the Questions with award-winning author Laura Stewart.
We are here with Fiona again. And Fiona, this has been a really intriguing conversation because it shakes up the way you're trained to think. I myself have had a couple of interesting ahas around just words and some thought processes. One question that comes up a lot from women I know is, things happen and some men, because not all men can do this, seem to be able to just get over it. They just move on. It's done. It's gone. And some women can't seem to do that. you're just kind of stuck in a loop because you're almost like you're expecting it to happen again because you've been burned. So you have an expectation, shall we say. How does that relate from the work that you're doing? Any advice that you can give on that?
Well, here's the thing about get over it. Guys are very good at it usually. They can have a big argument and then go, okay, you want to go grab a beer? We as women, usually because we have a deeper connection and desire to connect, that we take things very personally. And so, those three fingers pointing back at us, they can also be a negative. And yet, the ability to have, and I'm going to go back into computer speak, random access memory. So one of the things that I talk about, RAM is what its nickname is for. And when you buy a laptop, a geek is going to say, well, it's got X number, 4 gigs of RAM. And the 4 gigs of RAM are where this stuff is stored for a very short period of time, it's used, and then it gets replaced. So one of the things I'm learning over the course of time is, especially with guys who don't necessarily tap in, tune in, and sort of figure out how to keep relationships going as well, the better I have random access memory for things that are said, for things that are done, the better I can get over it, like water off a duck's back, and the happier I am during my own day. And the easier my day is because things don't stick to me. And trust me, I was a fly paper person. Everything stuck to me, and that's what built up my unhappiness. That's what built up the disease in my body, because everything was just getting stuck and clogged. So I teasingly say build up your random access memory, okay, and learn to get over it. How do you
do that? How do you learn to get over it?
It's a muscle. It's a muscle. If in doubt, you take a deep breath. You do what I can't tell people in interviews. Take a deep breath, which allows your brain to engage with your mouth. You don't go try and blasting yourself or the other person. You take a deep breath and you go, how critical, honestly, is this to me having a good day or a happy day or a good relationship with this person? It's a muscle. It's just like going to the gym. And it takes practice, and after a while it becomes much more positive. When I'm dating a guy, I say, because I'm a huge texter, as you can imagine, I spend so much time on the phone talking, I don't really want to go, hi, how's your day? That's just me. So I text, but I always say when I start to date a man, I am going to take everything that you say by text with a positive frame of mind. I'd love the happy faces, I'd like the emoticons and everything, but if you don't, I am still going to presume that you've got my best interest and you love me and want to, you're communicating of a positive nature. Can you imagine how few misunderstandings arise in my brain when I see something? I figure if people really want to tell me that I'm screwing something up, or if they want to tell me that I'm missing the point or something, they'll tell me. I don't have to infer it. I expect them to treat me, and I'm going to use that word expectation, because I do. I have a level of respect for myself that came from years and years of, doing this, but it means that I live a happier life, and therefore I attract happier people. I attract better partners, and it's just that.
So it sounds like one of the keys to better communications in all of your relationship, or ways to increase that, is to have clarity in your communications.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Clarity with myself first, okay, and clarity with what I want to create. And specifically, I'm going to break this down into two pieces: one for men, one for women.
Okay, and we only have a couple of minutes left, so you'll have to do it quickly.
So women learn to ask things clearly without emotion. Okay, no expectations. Men, listen for the meaning, not just the problem that has to be solved. And budget twice as long as you think it should take to have the same conversation with a woman. and then you won't get upset.
That makes so much sense. It's communication is a two-way street. Somebody has to speak, somebody has to listen, and then the opposite needs to happen. That other person needs to speak, and the other person needs to listen.
And we have stopped listening. And one of the things that really changed my life is when I started to listen as if my life depended on it, which it does. The joy of my life depends on how well I live in life.
So what's the last thought you'd like to leave my listeners with today?
Oh, goodness, there's so many. I don't know. I love these conversations. No idea. I'm excited about my next book. What's my last thought?
Well, tell me about your next book.
Oh, it's the new book is Mapping the Sexes, How Men and Women Navigate in Each Other's Words. And it's because we are so different. And there's all these communications and these relationship pieces are tripping us up. So it'll have some tongue-in-cheek, it'll have some fun to it. And of course, it being me, it will have some very bold, somewhat slappy, people would say, like, wow, that's tough love, and it's true. But, that's, I think, where the evolution comes from. That's where the awareness comes from. So I can have a whole other conversation on that.
Oh, absolutely. And I heard you say you want to leave people with a thought of enjoy what?
Enjoy life. Really, enjoy the relationships that we can. And take 100% accountability for your own life. I know that sounds tough. It gets easier as we practice it.
It's a muscle, as you said, and you need to just keep practicing and working with it.
Mm-hmm. And mindset is everything.
I have so thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, Fiona.
We covered so much ground.
We did, and for those of you who are listening, there was so much we covered. If you didn't catch it all, the show will be up on iTunes by tomorrow. And you can catch it and listen to it to your heart's content. Take lots of notes. Remember to reach out to Fiona via Twitter at Fiona_Fine or via her website, FionaFine.com. Thank you for being here with me today. I am so grateful you were able to do that.
Thank you. And I look forward to the conversations continuing with your listeners.
Oh, absolutely. Listeners, for those of you that are out there listening, and I know you're there because you send me so many great emails, this is the fun, is when my guests and I get to continue the conversation when we're off the air.
Mm-hmm.
So you can
challenge us.
Yeah, I mean, Fiona challenged me. It's so much fun to do that. So my guest next week is Peter Verleza, and we're going to be talking about touching people in appropriate ways. And if you need some help figuring out the right questions for your business, I'm available for one-to-one consults and workshops for your company. Remember, the right questions can change your life. So what are you asking today? Reach out to me at the Laura Stewart and find us on iTunes.
You've been listening to It's All About the Questions, starring Laura Stewart. Connect with Laura at it'sallaboutthequestions.com and download a free workbook that will help you ask better questions starting today.